to apply to get certified for the leadership in environmental excellence and design, you know, the LEED certification. So for those who don't know, buildings and projects can be certified on how sustainable or regenerative they are. So if the more green or sustainable you are, the higher the type of certification. I know that LEED is globally maybe the foremost, but I see within Nigeria, there's IFC Edge. So it's a World Bank kind of certification. And I see it gaining a lot of grounds. So these certification bodies, you design with sustainability in mind. There are different categories that you have to design with. We'll go through them using the Prime Tech case study. And then you put in different interventions. And in the end, you apply for a certain type of certification. What's the benefit of this? There are carbon ratings, global ratings that you can apply for. It might become legislation. Someday soon, there will be a law that says you can't build a certain scale of building without you proving that it is sustainable. We see it in other parts of the world, the UK, you know, and so on. And then federal governments have actually signed binding laws that within the country, they're going to reduce their carbon dioxide emissions. So very soon we'll be seeing it becoming mandatory for certain scale of projects to have to prove that they are being designed and constructed sustainably. So the first category
Isaiah, I've lost her.
See, we can hear Dr. Fatima, Dr. Amina rather anymore. Is she online? It could just be.
I think it's her network.
Yes, because it was kind of very glitchy when she was ending. She's back, she's on, but I think it's a network problem. Hello, Dr. Amina, can you hear us? I can see her on the call, but Dr. Amina, oh, she's gone. Uzo, would you want to reach out to her?
Yes, I have. She's currently having some network issues. She's apologized. Maybe we can call on the next presenter to take it, and then later she comes back on.
No, just give her a few minutes. Let's see how it goes.
Hopefully, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that works, yes. Yeah, welcome everyone on the call. Yes, these things do happen, some network glitch, and I'm sure she'll join us back. For me, it's been very interesting as well, listening to her, sharing those thoughts. And for the students on the call as well, welcome and thanks for being here. We hope you'll be able to learn some things and also pass on to your colleagues. So for those students on the call with us this morning, thank you so much for joining. I don't know if someone's hand seems to be up. Probably that was a mistake, yeah. Okay. Apologies, I'm sure she'll join us soon. So, in the text. So if you have comments, please, you can post them in the chat box. Your comments, the introductions as well. I see nobody wants to tell us who they are. It's just good for networking, so you could just mention your name, your designation, maybe I should go first, and then where you work. So please, you can drop your comments in the chat box, and then on the issue on Dr. Amina's presentation as well, you can drop your comments and then introductions as well, please. Welcome. Uzo, can you check in with her? Your questions, yes, that's right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your questions, your comments, observations, or you want to introduce yourself, please, you can just drop it in the chat box, please. Uzo, can you reach out to her and let's check if she's making any progress?
I reached out to her. She said, let's just give her a few minutes, please.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry for the inconveniences, please.
No worries, it's fine. So we'll just probably try and use the time while we wait for her. Please let's introduce ourselves in the chat box. My name is Fitayo Rosila Fakadi. I work for UNET as advisor on human rights and law. It's such a pleasure to be with you all this morning. So if you have questions for Dr. Amina as well, she doesn't have to finish the presentation. You can just drop your questions there. I'm sure when we come to the questions, comment and answer sessions, we'll be able to take them, but it's just good. You can drop them in there so you don't forget before she ends her presentation. Yes, so that's that. So welcome. And thanks for being patient with us. It's been very interesting for me. I love her presentation. I was glad to hear about the 3 Ps she had shared with us. She was talking about not just hinging our work on profit, but also on people and the planet. And that is so key, those 3 Ps. I mean, beyond the capitalist approach, there's also the need for us to be considerate of the people and the planet. So ensuring that our buildings, our work kind of respects and is hinged on people-centered approach, as well as a planet considerate and planet responsive approach beyond just the profit. So those are really good ones. And I'm so glad that she was able to share those with us. I'm also looking forward to her explaining more about the Prime Tech building. Looks good. It'll be good to really see what she has to say about the Prime Tech one. She was also mentioning issues around steps to energy efficiency, which I think is really, really key for us to. She was mentioning the first step as reducing the demand for energy. She mentioned the use of energy efficient equipment, as well as the third leg, which had to do with the use of renewable technologies. Those 3 steps are really key. And for me personally, it was good to hear her talk about these things. Yeah, the profit, the people, the planet. Those are highly key pillars for the built environment. Also, any update from her?
No, we're still waiting on her, ma'am.
Okay.
In the next 2 minutes, if she doesn't come up, we'll just take over to move over to the next presenter.
That's the best thing. So we'll just do 2 minutes more, and then at hopefully she joins at 10:51-ish. I'll move on to the next speaker. We can always come back to her when she's able to sort out the internet issues. It's part of technology issues. We always have glitches at events, and we just have to accommodate some of those unforeseen circumstances. But don't leave, don't sign out. We still have 2 more speakers who would also be doing justice to their topics. So please just bear with us and sincere apologies. These are things beyond our control, and I promise that we're working to sort it out. So in the meantime, if you have comments, clarifications, or some questions, and you can just post in the chat box. I'm sure we all heard her, and I'm sure we all found it interesting. I did. I'm holding on to the 3 pillars personally: profit, people, planet. That's like a REMA point for me, and I'm sure you all listened as well. So if you have questions, please.
I'm so sorry.
Oh yeah, great, Dr. Amina, good to have you back. Thank you.
I really apologize.
No worries. It's unforeseen. It's fine. Thank you. Yeah. Please proceed. Over.
So that was about resilience. So we'll discuss that when we come to resilience. So like I was saying, we're talking about this category of the submission called sustainable sites. So they did, this is drainage for runoff water, but it's been done not with hard landscaping and, not underground. It's used to be part of oxygen generation because there are plants there, and it's good visuals. You feel good within the environment looking at nature, but it's still collecting runoff and it's still a water reservoir. This is something that you can do that is part of infrastructure, giving back to the environment, to people's well-being. And, it's a tick, tick, tick. So that's good. Next slide, please. So there are also analysis that comes with these certifications and any sustainability interventions. it really needs to be data driven, in that you need to identify that there's a problem, and then you bring an array of interventions, solutions. The best thing, like I said, is to use different methods of calculation, be it experimentation, simulations, calculations, whatever it is you're going to use, to actually do calculations on how you think it would work. So that would also help you in making better choices, not just because of one system, but like I said, a systems-based thinking. So bring this thought to water efficiency. You have to think about water efficiency as a whole system. So there's the toilets, there's the urinals, hand wash basins, sinks, different types of sinks, and what interventions you bring to these different levels, and collectively they come together to become water efficiency. A lot of this has to do with engineering. So there are water, you know that water shower. Before, it used to pump water, and we want the water to be forceful. So we keep increasing the pressure of the water. But some brilliant person decided, hey, why don't we add air pressure to less water? And then the body would feel the pressure and think it's all water, because that's what the body wants to feel, pressure, and it's hot, and maybe it's been a long day and your muscles need that pressure. So why don't we add air pressure? That way we're saving water. So these are all some technological interventions that we have to know about so that we can plan for it. So if you notice now, toilets, they have two different flushes. One is small, one is big, depending on which one you need, is another way of saving water. There are systems that you can use where you're using wastewater from the sinks and recycling it. That's gray water recycling. You're recycling it to flush. I mean, you're not drinking it, and it's been treated. You will put it through a filter. You won't see any yuckiness, but you will just keep using it for flushing. In places where we don't have water, why not? Even if we have water, if you have water in your house, your next door neighbor probably doesn't have water. So we need to be able to be efficient. That's sustainability, not only for your own future generation, but for people around you, to get equity and justice in whatever systems you have. So next slide, please. So that's about water efficiency. They have a series of interventions. And then you have to also show about another category is energy and atmosphere. So, most of the time we have the conventional concrete block. That's just how we build. But that's not all. We're working really hard to see how different building materials would actually perform. Even vernacular materials that have been made in a more contemporary way. And we really need more experimentation in that so that it will open up the markets. I know a lot of things is about what's available in the market, but it's a catch-22. The demand will push for the market, and then the market will also push demand. So if we as professionals start thinking and demanding for other building materials that have been proven to work, to perform better in keeping out heat when we don't want heat, and things like that. So here they use a lot of insulation. I did some research some years back, and the best place to put insulation, especially in a bungalow or a duplex, is on the roof, because that's where you have all the sun. The roof more than the walls, but then the walls have the biggest surface area. So insulating your walls in a place like Nigeria, where it's very hot, is one of the things to do. Obviously, the best thing to do is to have shorter sides facing the east and the west. You see, that's conservation just by design. So a more engineering intervention, which is the efficiency side, is using insulation. So that costs more money. So that's the kind of way that we're thinking. But here they use insulation which they put under their energy and atmosphere category. And they're making the U value better and better. Next slide, please. Okay, more about energy and atmosphere and use of. I'm getting some noise. I'm not sure where it's coming from. Thank you. So we need to know a lot about building physics. And even if we don't know it, there are other professionals who know it. So yes, another core concept about sustainability and regeneration is holistic work with other professionals. I'm an architect. Most of us here are quantity surveyors. Right at the design stage, we all have to come together with engineers and talking about this systems thinking, because it has to make sense to me as the architect, it has to make sense to the quantity surveyor, and it has to make sense to the engineer on how to achieve all of these things. If not, I will do my thing, pass it on, and it will all just go to rubbish. So this has to be a systems approach in terms of the professionals as well. And that leads beautifully into the BIM theory, where all professionals are working in tandem to achieve a sustainable goal. Next slide, please. So more about kind of calculations that you need to do. This is systems thinking, because the computer simulation, you put in your data, conventional, business as usual scenario. And then you start looking at the different systems and you start modeling the different interventions. So lighting, I'm changing from the normal fluorescent to LED bulbs. So this is their what. Water, I'm reducing the flow rate. I'm reducing this, that. And then, dynamically, the computer will be able to show you within a year how much you're able to reduce. Now, sometimes, if you remember, I said something like you can add the windows to add light, but then you're bringing in more heat. So this kind of thing will now show you what effect it has on the whole, rather than you just doing things, arbitrarily, discreetly, not in tandem. So we need to run these types of calculations and simulations for it to actually make sense. Next slide, please. Right, we've come to mother engines now. So these are highly technical things. So on a normal day, we would say, open your windows and you'll be comfortable. I wish it were that easy. Sometimes whatever you do, people are not comfortable. So sustainability, if you remember, is also about people. People have to be comfortable, not just comfortable, they have to flourish. They have to feel good, within their buildings up to, an acceptable standard. So what if opening the windows is not enough? What if your window shading is not enough? You have to start thinking, okay, am I using fans? Am I using split AC? Or am I going central AC because of the functionality and scale of the design? So again, there are many different, IFC Edge will do it for you. That one is text-based. There are the ones that you have to model, in more complexity. Thank God, more and more people are training in these skills. So these are skill gaps that we have within the built environment, how people can actually model and simulate all these interventions and quickly changing interventions to see its effect on the overall performance of the building. So in some buildings, it makes sense to have this air handling unit, either at the bottom or at the top. All these things are things that you can quickly, if I say quickly, relatively quickly simulate and experiment on how they work best. Or should you just stick, split units? Personally, I hate seeing those back ends of split units out of buildings because I'm an architect. I think they're ugly, but then they have their uses, of course. So next slide. And there are many other technologies, by the way. It's not just the ones that we're used to. And I'm hoping that sometimes market forces will actually bring in more suitable equipment into Nigeria. Then the one that, we all expect whenever, well, I don't know about you, but I find that solar is overflogged because it's not even very efficient. It has its uses, but it's all these calculations that would tell you if solar is the renewable energy that you should be using. There are wind turbines, there are different types now, vertical, horizontal. There are ground source heat cooling and heating and cooling technologies. These are all that we really should open our minds to. But yes, we have solar. It's all right, go ahead. Next slide. Aha. We talked a bit about materials, and we said the use of materials as the more local, the better, because local talks about less transportation, so cost and carbon dioxide emissions, but it also talks about cultural sensitivity. So the idea that regions have integrity, vernacular architecture and traditional architecture speaks to your sense of place and how you feel something is yours, it belongs to you, so you'll take care of it because it is yours. It's something that I think is missing in Nigeria, that also we have to pay more attention to in trying to do things that are our own and suited to our own climate and our own culture. So it's no surprise that materials and resources are a key component of the certification. Next slide, please. So in terms of architecture, there's a way that you can do the planning so that, so let's say you can put your stores in the west side. The west side is where you have the most heat. So you put the spaces that, it's not a big problem if it gets overheated. You don't have to continuously air condition a store. But if you have classes, you'd put them, let's say, in the east, because that's where you have the morning sun, or hospital rooms, because the morning sun has medicinal properties and it keeps you alert and awake. So is this kind of planning that you can do that also adds to the indoor environmental quality. You also have to take care in knowing what chemicals come together with your building materials. So some of them emit poisonous toxins that would poison you. I mean, I'm sure you've heard stories about people feeling unwell in buildings, and then the minute they get out, they feel better, and we think it's spirits in the house. I guess they're a form of spirits. It's just toxins and poisonous gases that are being emitted by different things. I'm getting a call. Am I running out of time?
Yes, please. Kindly round up, Ma, please.
All right. Next slide, please. I'll quickly then go into the resilient thing. So what is resilience? My data went off. I had to shut down. Being resilient means you have a system in place that helps you to manage whatever situation you're in so that things just don't shut down on you. So simply, that's what resilience is. And we know what infrastructure is. So a resilient infrastructure system is something that is sorely needed. We all know that in Nigeria, the grid is collapsing all the time. Why? Why don't we have resilience? So do we need to decentralize some things? Do we need to tap into other sources that are not there now so that we don't have this total shutdown? A resilient infrastructure has to be something that the people socially integrate and engage with, shared responsibility, and all these things that are in this figure. I'll just speed up. Next slide, please. So again, I don't have to go deep into the benefits. They're there because we're feeling the problem of no resilience. So no public toilets. You have a runny stomach. You're doomed. What do you do? Power failure. No water. People have to keep running around on the street with things on their heads. This is not normal. Next slide, please. So there's this fine gentleman who shared some resilient infrastructure that they're working on in Kaduna Office of Resilience, originally under the championship of Malam Nasser El-Rufai. So within the waterfront of Kaduna, they know that there's a problem there. It's turning into a crime-infested place where people don't want to be associated with. So they're deciding, infrastructure-wise, profit-wise, environmentally, and people-wise, what do they do? So they came in with two different interventions, an immediate one and a more long-term one. So the immediate, next slide, please. The immediate one, they decided to dredge the river. So this, I'm happy to say, just like Prime Tech is done. People are living in that building very nicely. I've been there. And the one in Kaduna, this is before and after pictures of dredging being done along that route. But what I'm very excited about, in the next slide, there's a video of the more long-term solution intervention to the waterfront, something that will bring prosperity. Next slide, please. Can you play the video? Oh, it's unfortunate. I can't see the video, but I will share the slides. It's a futuristic video showing what they intend to achieve. There's this theory I came across that says, if you have affordable housing, so it's like saying to the people there, continue to wallow in poverty, in your poverty. But when you say that, no, I want to regenerate, I want to bring prosperity, it's kind of bringing hope to the people to say that we're bringing in business to you. We're trying to make your environment more beautiful because we don't expect you to remain poor. So that's why I found this very hopeful and very interesting. And I pray that it sees fruition. I don't know, we'll have to find a different way to share the video. Next slide, please. Sorry about this. Okay, I guess I'll just conclude, or are we trying again? Okay, next slide, please. Okay. Okay. So, earlier I said when there's OIBO interventions of regeneration, actually what I'm thinking about is the image on the left rather than the image on the right. And I'm hoping that within these discussions, we're going to be thinking about solutions that suit us. And because even the white people are trying to run away from these overly engineered solutions. So we really need to find a balance that suits our culture, our technological space, even our literacy levels, and of course, economy. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, I think that we are seeing evidence that the earth really is in distress, and that scientists are saying we have even reached a tipping point. So now it's not how to just maintain the earth, is how to regenerate. So no more, we need a mindset change on how to deal with our environment. No more business as usual. It's not just how to get the next quick buck, because we're killing ourselves. We need to move beyond efficiency, even beyond sustainability, to resilience, to regeneration. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Amina, for the highly insightful presentation, and thanks for being resilient in the midst of the technological glitch. I know you had mentioned about resilience infrastructure, and that came to play as well when you had the challenges. Thank you so much for that. Before when you were out, I told them I also strongly held on to some 3 pillars you had mentioned about not just profit, but people and planet-centered responses, which is really, really key, and that's part of what you had mentioned. Also strongly was the point you had made on shared responsibility. If the society is at a tipping point, then there's need for a mindset change for us to see this as a shared responsibility on all our parts. So thank you so much, Dr. Amina, and thanks for making the presentation available to everyone so they could go through it again. I'll personally do that. It was really good to listen to you, and thank you for reminding us that a sustainable built environment should aim at reducing environmental hazards, issues around energy, the carbon, waste management, and all of those things, so that we can have an environment that is culturally, socially, and also economically responsive to all of our needs. Thank you so much, Dr. Amina. I'm sure people have comments for you and questions, but we'll take you later on when we are taking all the questions. We really appreciate you for your time and for being here this morning. Thank you so much, Dr. Amina. Yeah, thank you. So I'm sure you all agree with me that that's a really, really good one. Please, before we go on to the next speaker, I'd like to implore you, we like to keep memories alive, and we have so many people here on the call today. Can you kindly turn on your cameras so they can have a group picture, like a quick snap of all the participants, please? I'm imploring you to please turn on your cameras so that the technical team can take us a picture of everyone here. I'm sure we'll all want to see this sometime in the future. So please kindly crave your indulgence. So please turn on your speaker, your cameras, so we can have a group picture. Thank you. And thanks for remaining on the call today. We really appreciate it. Yes, so please kindly turn on your camera so we can have a screenshot of all participants. Yes, thank you. You're here, so we should have your picture and keep the memories, and that would really be good. Yes, so you can keep it on. They'll probably take it in the next 10 seconds, 20 seconds. Please turn it on so we can take a screenshot. So the next person whom I'll be introducing this morning to also do justice to his topic. I hope I'm right. Is he a he? I think he's a he, yeah. He's a he, all things being equal. Yeah, so that will be QS. No, she's a she. I'm not sure of the gender. I'm sorry. Apologies. Should be a she.
He's a he. He's a he.
Should be a she. He's a he. Oh, okay. So I was right at first. Okay. Okay. Thank you. He's a he. So that's Dr. Omoyena Odumbaku. Yes. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. Apologies on that. So he's a, yeah. So I saw like doctor. I saw QS. Dr. Omoyena Odumbaku.
Omoyena is not around yet.
Oh, so okay. He's not around. Oh, okay. So we'll probably go on to the next person, which is QS Adebowale Onyileye. He's a he. So QS Adebowale Onyileye Adebowale Olushola FNI QS PMP MRICS. He's a fellow of the Nigerian Institute of Quantity Surveyors and the managing partner of Project Associates, a company that offers consulting services and training for professionals in the built environment. He majored in quantity surveying with a BSc honors. He then obtained an MSc in construction management with specialization in claims administration and management. He has more than 22 years of expertise managing commercial projects. He's a skilled quantity surveyor and project manager with understanding of contracts to oversee every facet of a construction project. Adebowale is a resource person for Project Academy, the training arm of Project Associates, where he provides training in emerging specializations in project monitoring and evaluation. He also has provided contract management, funders representative, contract administration, and expert witness services on numerous occasions on behalf of many clients. Mr. Adebowale has also provided feasibility appraisals for numerous estate development projects, while advising banks on management of contract financing loans. He holds a PMP, Scrum Fundamental Certification in Project Management, and a Six Sigma Yellow Belt in Quality Management. He is a member of the Project Management Institute, Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, and the International Society of Sustainability Professionals. Mr. Adebowale is a qualified green building sustainability professional with a LEED AP BD Plus C accreditation. Please join me in welcoming Dr. QS Adebowale Oyiloye, who will be taking us on the quantifying the future of the built environment for sustainable development topic. We can't wait to listen to you, sir. And thank you so much for availing us your time and your resources as well as your intellect to be with us this morning. Please welcome and over.
Thank you very much, Kyle. I'm trying to share my screen now. Just confirm when it is up.
Yes, we can see your screen now. I can see it. I'm sure, can others see it as well? Please confirm. I can see it.
Okay, right.
Yes.
View, it's okay now. Full screen, I believe.
Yes, please. It is full screen. Thank you.
All right, great. Okay. Thank you very much. I welcome everybody to this webinar. Also thank the NIQS Foundation for this opportunity. I will just go right into the topic that I'm speaking to, that's quantifying the future of the built environment for sustainable development. And I want to appreciate the first speaker because she has actually said a lot of things that I tried to take off my own presentation because I expected that I would have dealt with. So I'll just be speaking on specific areas. So I'm looking at this topic. I'm looking at 4 different distinct areas. Just quickly, I'll take an introduction and then talk about sustainable development, the built environment, and then quantifying. While I talk about quantifying, I'll try as much as possible not to just talk about it as a quantity surveyor, but just what it really entails when we're talking about sustainable development. But as an introduction, quantifying is just simply the act of measuring or judging the size or amount of something. It is both an art and a science. However, the concern and the challenge is that we need to now ask ourselves, what are we measuring? Where are we doing the measurement? When? And then how are we going to do it? So, but the built environment itself is everything that we as humans have brought up, anything that is not natural to the earth, whatever as humans we have brought in, that's the built environment. Even the hut in the village is also a built environment because we have actually developed it for ourselves, but also be able to live on the earth and to be able to enjoy living there. And then, of course, sustainable development. I thank the chairman of the foundation. He has mentioned some 4 pillars of sustainable development, but I just want to look at the side that's from the UN resolution 42187 that defines sustainable development is just meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of the future generations to meet their own needs. That means that we get what we want. However, we are to make sure that the future generation can also get what they want. The challenge in this definition is this. Probably we know what we want, but the future generation, can we judge or can we determine what they will want? So that's a dilemma, but I will not be delving into that aspect, but just a question that people have to look into. So sustainable development, what it means basically in the context of we in the built environment is just reduction in the environmental impact of our built environment. That's simply what it means. However, in order to be able to achieve that, we need to begin from even the siting and the structure or the design of our buildings or infrastructure. The first speaker mentioned that just by siting a particular building in a particular orientation already determines a lot about the energy consumption of that building. So imagine if you are siting a building in the wrong direction, you are inadvertently increase the environmental impact of that building just by siting of a building. To go on, energy efficiency is also part of what we look at when we're talking about sustainable development, water efficiency, materials efficiency, which is very, very important, very, very key. That's one of the things that we are still actually battling with, especially in this part of the world. And then, of course, in the environmental quality enhancement, how the environment is when we are making use of the built environment, and operations and maintenance optimization, how to make sure that even after all is done, how does the building, the asset, how does it function, how does it run? And then, of course, we try to reduce waste or eliminate waste as much as possible, because any waste that is generated is an inefficient system. That's what it is. Once waste is being generated, that means there's a level of inefficiency in a system. But a very efficient system is a system that does not generate waste, or if there is anything that looks like waste, it goes back into the system. So that is what sustainable development is basically about. And then I would like to quickly just look at some things about the Global Sustainability Development Report 2023. The caption of that report says that we are in times of crisis and times of change. That means that there is a problem and there is a need for us to make changes. Whereas probably when I was in school, nobody was actually hammering on sustainability. I believe now, even in schools, that's being emphasized. So when we were trained, the aspect of sustainability was not part of the curriculum, at least for me. But I know now that sustainability has become part of the curriculum because we are in the times of change. And that's the key area. We are in a time of change. And some of the goals under the SDG 17, I'm just looking at these particular ones, but it goes beyond this. That goal number 6, that we're talking about the water and sanitation. Every built environment, like I said, will generate some form of waste. And you see, one of the areas that we might not actually be looking at is that even when you are when you go into a land and you are preparing the land for construction, the clearing of that land itself has an impact on clean water, because by disturbing that soil, you create the possibility of what I call it now, sedimentation. While there is a rainfall or maybe the water pours over the land, that sediments go into the water system in that area. So that means that you are indirectly actually affecting the sources of clean water in that place. So that's just one of them. But another place that's very important is goal 12. That's responsible resource consumption and production. How do we our raw materials, how do we extract our raw materials? Is it sustainable? Are we going to keep having these raw materials? Is there a way that the depletion of the raw materials can be maintained? So these are just areas of what sustainability talks about, and then we begin to see how it connects to the built environment. Studies have shown that about 40% of energy processes related CO2 emissions are caused by the built environment. 33% of water consumption is by the built environment. And of course, 35% of generated waste is from the built environment. And you see, because if you have that 5% of generated waste, it tells you that there is a huge amount of inefficiency in that system. I'm looking at the built environment as a system, as a whole. But then, when we're talking about the built environment of the future is going to be bigger, but it's also going to be greener, because more people are becoming aware of this need. And even manufacturers are already making changes to make sure that their products that go into the market are more sustainable. For example, maybe some 5-10 years ago, when you want to buy an air conditioner, the refrigerant that will be used in it is one that has a higher ozone depletion potential, which is a negative thing. But today now, I know that we are having some better ones available. However, in doing that, we are losing some efficiency, but that I'll talk about it later. But something to note is that the cities of the future are already being built today. Most of the buildings that we build today, most of them with at least maybe last for 50 years. So that means when we're talking about the built environment of the future, we are talking about what we're actually doing today. So if we want something good 50 years from now, today is the time to sow the seed. Like they say, the best time to plant a tree is maybe like 30 years ago. So the built environment of the future is being built today. And one thing that we see also is that there is a greater technological advances. And we have areas of prefabrication, smart buildings, modular construction, 3D printing. All these are things that will come more to the fore when we are looking at our buildings and going forward into the future. Smart buildings are becoming quite common now. Probably before they were a challenge, but now they are becoming quite common. Things are becoming more efficient. We have building management systems that help you to monitor the energy consumption of a building, that help you to plan, and you have different things that you can do if you have a smart building. There is a particular project by Saudi Arabia called The Line. It's part of the NEOM project. The Line is a city, a proposed city, work has started actually, where they are looking at having a city where you don't have to use no roads. So if there are no roads, then definitely you don't need cars. And if you don't have cars, that means there will be no emissions, particularly from cars. It is planned to run on 100% renewable energy. 95% of the land will be preserved for nature. This is a big task. Apart from The Line, they have Trojena. That one is also one of the projects that they're working on towards the Asia Games, I think in 2024, 25, thereabout. So this is the outlook of the future of the built environment. So many things are going on at the same time. Now, we have seen sustainability, we have seen the built environment. Now, how do we bring them together? So a sustainable built environment is simply one that is circular in essence. When resources come into the system, they are not thrown out as waste. They are converted to be used for something else. We reduce the level of waste that comes out from the system. The sustainable built environment is designed for longevity. It has to last long. It has to be flexible, adaptable, so that you can reassemble the building, you can convert it to whatever you want to use it in future. And of course, you can be able to disassemble it. You can be able to bring it down without destroying. Without, here, when they say they want to do maybe a renovation or urban renewal, it just comes most of the time, not all the time. Just demolish buildings that are there and then you start putting up new buildings. But in the future, the sustainable built environment must be one that you can easily disassemble. And then you can reassemble part of it somewhere else or for some other purposes. So it's a system where, as much as possible, resources are not used once. They are reused over and over until the lifespan or the economic life of that material ends. Now, having seen this, what is the quantification challenge? It is obvious that if we have such plans to have big buildings that are sustainable, that are functioning different from what we have today, buildings, the built environment that is that is smart. As a matter of fact, a built environment that could almost be running on AI, that's artificial intelligence, that can do some things on its own without your direct intervention. It means that the scale is huge. And whenever you're talking about huge scale, especially in this aspect, that means that it is data centric. That means you need a lot of data to be able to do this. And that is why now we're talking about machine learning, increase in understanding how to bring in, make use of data, data mining and all that. It is data centric. That is something that we need to understand. When we're talking about the quantification challenge, it is data centric. And in order to be able to quantify the future built environment, we will require tools that measure different aspects of cost and impact. For example, we have the LCC that the first speaker mentioned, that's life cycle cost, or LCCA, life cycle cost analysis. And then you have the LCA, which is distinct from the LCC or LCCA. And then we have, of course, BIM, and that will be the last part of my presentation today. So let me go into the LCC when we're talking about quantification of the built environment, or the future of built environment. Number one is that life of a building has different aspects. There's a design life, there's a physical or the operational life, there's economic life, and of course there's an obsolescence life. Even when the building ceases to meet the function that it was meant for, it also has an obsolescence life. That means you can still take it and use part of it. However, we need to understand that the cost of a building is in its life. A building that does not last long generally come out to be more expensive and more unsustainable. But a building that lasts longer will be generally a more sustainable building, generally speaking, all things being equal. And then, of course, we also know that there are different materials that go into each building. So the life cycle cost analysis is for us to measure and manage the lifetime cost of any project or assets. And the project or asset is a consolidation of different materials, different items, and passes through different phases. For example, to be able to look at the cost of a building, we are looking at the initial or construction cost. We look at the renewal cost, that means the cost of replacement. A building might be built to last for, let's say, 16 years, but the air conditioning system there might only be able to last for, let's say, 15 years. So there's a replacement cost. You need to bring in a new air conditioner. However, the building itself is still okay. Then you have the operation cost, now the cost of energy, be able to operate it. And then, of course, maintenance cost. There are things that needs to be repaired and all that, cost of keeping it in use. And then, of course, the disposal or end-of-life cost. That is the cost of the next step for a building. When we are looking at sustainability for a building, we are looking at the fact that that building, at the end of its life, you are not just thinking about demolition. You are thinking about transforming it into something else. So simply put, life cycle cost is the construction cost plus the net present value of the renewal cost or service cost, the operation cost, the maintenance cost, and the end of life cost. Net present value means that if probably it's going to cost, let's say, XYZ over 50 years to maintain a building, we discount all that amount into a present value today. What does it cost? And that will now become the basis of our analysis or measurement or evaluation of the building itself. You can see that from my own presentation, I'm not just looking at quantifying as in a measurement that is typically the traditional quantity surveyor's role, but I'm looking at that beyond just the measurements. What are the implications of the quantities? What are the implications of what you are coming up with, because that is what the future is about. Some projects that you get involved with today, they are not only talking about how much is it today, how much concrete do we need, but they're also asking you that, okay, if we are taking this particular material, what are the implications of this material? Do you have something to tell us that this particular material is more sustainable? So I go to the next one, which is now, okay, let me just quickly run through this. We now see that life cycle cost is not an end, it is a means to an end. It is not an end when we're talking about sustainability, it is a means to an end. It's a guide, it's a tool for us to be able to see how we can arrive at a sustainable built environment. Okay. So now I just quickly go to life cycle assessment. Life cycle cost looks more about the cost or to the cost. Life cycle assessment looks more about the environmental impact of an asset or a material. The ingredients that I use, everything are being looked at when we are talking about life cycle assessment. The environmental impact of the product, of the building, and then when we're looking at LCAs, that's life cycle assessment, we are asking ourselves, do you have an EPD, that's environmental product declaration for the materials you're using? Do you have an HPD, health product declaration? What product category rules are being used when you are giving us this report? Let's know. Somebody can say, I know, let me just say this, by the way, there are some of us, okay, let me just say this. Sometimes ago, I wanted to buy a shirt and I ordered it online. When it got to me, I saw the size, you know, okay, it's supposed to be size 17 or XL, something like that. When it got to me, I discovered that it was actually like a size M. That is like X, nothing close, much smaller than what was written on the shirt. Product category rules is a system whereby everybody is using the same set of yardstick to report on the material or the product. So that if I am saying that this product needs XYZ, I'm using the same rule as somebody from another place so that there is no discrepancy. And then, of course, building product declaration and optimization, that is being able to look at the materials and see how we can optimize them. I mentioned about AC sometimes ago. When you're talking about air conditioning, even the refrigerant that you use, they have different environmental impacts. HFCs, that's hydrofluorocarbons, are more efficient, but they have more global warming potential, GWP, and they have even higher ODP, that's ozone depletion potential. They have higher, but they are more efficient. However, HCFCs, they are not as efficient. They have lower ozone depletion potential, lower global warming potential. They have a lower one, but they're not as efficient. But it is when you carry out the life cycle assessment that you begin to know which one is actually more sustainable at the end of the day. Because though it is efficient, but it has more negative impact, this is less efficient, but it has less negative impact. There is an optimum point where you know that if you're going to use this, if this is the kind of equipment you're installing and you're using this kind of refrigerant, it's going to last for maybe 5 years before you need to change it. You carry out the environmental impact assessment of that particular material. So it covers the product life cycle, material extraction, manufacturing, transportation, and all whatnot. Basically, having a product that is a cradle to cradle, that means that from extraction, it can go back to a point that it is an input again into a new system where it can be reused. That is the best. So we are trying to eliminate any kind of inefficiency. The same way that is being done for material, it can be done for a building, though, like I said, it's data-centric and it is a bit quite complex. You need tools to be able to carry this out. There are some companies that have such tools. There's one called One Click LCA. They have, we can even go and do a trial run. So many materials will be displayed. You pick different things that you want to use and see what works best for you. All right. So while talking about life cycle assessment, we also need to talk about the measurement of embodied carbon and the carbon footprint of your buildings, of your assets. You need to look at those things. Now, it is becoming a standard that for you to embark on some capital projects, especially in the UK, that's the one I know I'm very much aware of, that you need to carry out the assessment of the embodied carbon. These are part of the quantifying that you need to do when you're talking about future built environment, not the traditional built environments. These are the things that are being required going forward. These are the things that are being demanded, not just as a QS, but as a professional. You know, the theme is the role of the professional, role of the built environment. So as a professional, you can be an architect, a builder, an engineer, a quantity surveyor. These are the things that will be required if we are pursuing sustainable development. Now, to be able to see the life cycle emissions of a building, you need to know the carbon emissions during the construction phase, the renewal phase, the operational phase, the maintenance, and the end of life. All these have their own individual carbon emissions. You need to be able to quantify all this for you to be able to give a very good and acceptable report about the quantifying of the future of that built environment as it relates to sustainable development. And one of the reasons why this is important is because corporations now, as part of their environmental, social, governance requirements, when they are embarking on projects, they need to make such reports about their contribution to the climate change, as in the sustainability of the environment. They need to make this as part of their reports. So unless it is being quantified, you cannot be able to do that. And like they say, what you cannot measure, you cannot manage. So that is why it needs to be quantified. And now, the system of the future. We are very familiar with BIM, that's Building Information Modeling. It has been around for some years now, and it is going to take even more root going forward. It is going to become the de facto way of executing projects in the built environment and even beyond. Now, it started from different levels. When we're talking about the 5D, we're talking about just the money. At the 6D, we're talking about sustainability. And at 7D, we're talking about facility management, which goes beyond when it has been constructed, how it is being used, how it's being operated, operations and maintenance, everything is included in BIM. But the area that might relate to us and this particular presentation is that through BIM, you can be able to do what is called quantity information model. It's an extraction of the quantities of materials that are involved or that will be used in the project. But you agree with me, especially those that have used some of these softwares for drawing, even I think Revit and so on, they have some facility for you to extract quantities. But the challenge is that it can only extract what has been defined. If you do not define what you are designing or what you have done, it cannot generate what is not there. So that means the definition level in design is of paramount importance. And when you are defining that, we're talking about specifications. So you need to be able to know the kind of materials, and that takes us back to the LCC and LCA. So when you know the kind of materials, automatically it can begin to quantify not just material quantities that will be used in a construction project. It can begin to even give us information about how sustainable that project or that building will be, or that infrastructure will be. And definitely also, it can even advise on the requirements for facility management. So you see that BIM becomes like the bedrock for the sustainable future built environment. BIM becomes like a bedrock now. So that is where I believe that we as professionals in the built environment, that should be where our focus will be, and to see how we can develop this going forward. All right. So what is the way forward, really? What's the way forward? What can we do? I think that one of the things is that we need to begin to consider life cycle cost analysis more. We cannot just look at buildings in a traditional way. I know that the generation, the people that are coming after us, they are more, they are being taught all this from school. And then, of course, we need to begin to know that our decisions should be data-driven. Should be data-driven. I was on a project, and one of the people on the site, one of the professionals, something that they wanted to implement. And I said, look, if you are going to do this, oh, it's going to be beautiful. It's going to look good. But what are the impact or the implication of doing this thing? So data, oh, this is data that is available. This product, after so many years, this is what is going to happen. This is the impact on the environment. Then you cannot make use of that product. You just have to go and look for a product that has something better quality. And of course, also, we need to look at our built environment to integrate it into the circular economy. That what we are doing is it's more sustainable, and it's something that can go through that reduces waste, helps us to recycle and to reuse everything that we make use of. And then, of course, education and awareness. This is very, very important. And in conclusion, the future built environment is being built today. We are not looking for it tomorrow. It is being built today. What you do today is what you have in another maybe 10, 20, 50 years from now. And of course, to quantify a sustainable environment, we need to understand the measurement and costing of circular, long-lasting, flexible, adaptable, and reusable buildings. So what, as professionals, let's get the necessary specific knowledge and proficiencies, and let's get the accreditation that is needed. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you very much, QS Adebowale Oyinleye, for that highly insightful presentation. I'm sure everyone on the call today agrees with me so strongly that it was highly insightful. You know, you taking us through the UN Sustainable Development Goals and report that says that we're in times of crisis. And what does that require? It requires us also to be in a time of change, to bring about that change. And how do we bring about the change? You have explained some ways for us to chart the way forward through considering the entire life cycle of buildings, through making sure that our decisions on buildings and other environmental issues are data-driven, and also to ensure that we reduce waste through recycling and reusing and all of those things, and ultimately through education and awareness. And that's why we are so grateful for NIQS Foundation for coming up with this webinar, because that speaks to the need for us to ensure education and awareness. And in the list of participants, we have both the old generation and the young generation. So we are ensuring that we cater for the needs of all persons on education and awareness on this issue of common interest. Thank you so much, QS Adebowale Oyinleye, for that highly insightful presentation. We are grateful. Thank you very much. We have another wonderful speaker in the room. Apologies to Dr. Rosemary. She was in the room earlier, but we had no idea that she was in the room. So we sincerely apologize for reorganizing the schedule of the agenda. We know you also had to have some other engagements, but thanks for your patience and thanks for staying through till this point, despite the fact that you have other engagement. Thank you so much. So I'd like to introduce Dr. Apologies if I don't get that right. I'm so sorry if I mispronounce your name. Dr. Omoyena Rosemary Ojumbako, PhD. She'll be taking us through the presentation on designing regenerative cities, a blueprint for sustainable urban development. That is a really, really key topic. Who is Dr. Ojumbako? She's a distinguished leader in urban planning and sustainable development, and she's currently serving as the Human Settlement Officer, Anglophone West Africa, at the United Nations Human Settlement Program, which is UN Habitat. She has a wealth of experience, and she has advocated for policies policies and programs on to provide financial and investment solutions for citizens, particularly the underprivileged. And before her role at UN Habitat, Dr. Odumbaku was a lecturer at the University of Lagos and Mashood Abiola Polytechnic, Ogun State. She holds a PhD in urban and regional planning and is currently pursuing further studies in economics at the London School of Economics. Her extensive body of work includes numerous publications and presentations at both national and international conferences. Beyond her professional accomplishments, she is the founder of Arability Hub, a nonprofit organization that empowers girls and young women to influence positive social change. She's also actively involved in various projects, advocating for cleaner environments in impoverished neighborhoods. As a dedicated advocate for women's empowerment, Dr. Odumbaku serves on the boards of several nonprofit organizations addressing the challenges faced by women across Africa. That is fantastic. Thank you so much, Dr. Omoyena Odumbaku, for availing us your time and for staying put, even though you have other engagements and we had to reschedule the agenda. Sincere apologies for that, but we are so grateful that you have decided to wait and to share your wealth of knowledge with us. Over to you, Doctor. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Fisayo. Good afternoon, everybody. Permit me to first of all thank the organizers and especially Mrs. Quantity Eke, Christina Eke, and her amiable team. Unfortunately, there was a bit of a mix-up, but before then, we've had very smooth, collaboration up until this time. I won't take much of our time because I know we're running quite late on schedule, and today is also a weekend, and my kids we're like 2 hours ahead, and we had something planned for 2 p.m. So if I have my slides up, I would like to start almost immediately. Can I have the slides up, please?
Uzo, please, can you project her
Okay, I'm
slides?
getting your slides ready, ma, please. Okay, please, ma, it's up.
Uzo, it's yet to be
Yes,
made
so we have a
screen.
bit of a, can you hear me, please?
Yes,
Yes,
we can.
ma'am,
I can hear
you.
you.
But I can't see the slides.
Yes,
That's
Uzo,
somewhere I have.
it should be made the active screen. We are still seeing Dr. Omoyena as the active screen on the Zoom call. So the presentation should be the active screen instead.
Is that for me to do or for the secretariat?
No, it's for Uzo to do. Yes, he's
Okay.
doing that now. He's sharing his screen. Yes, fantastic. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you once again, everyone. Today, I'll be taking us through designing regenerative cities, excuse me, a blueprint for sustainable urban development. I think, Uzo, maybe you could look at me. I really don't like next slide. So maybe if I just flip my hand so we could have it quite seamless. So as Madam Fisayo said, my name is Omod Baku. I work with UN Habitat, and I'm pleased to share with you today, after 2 very eloquent speakers, I hope I can fit into their very big shoes, a concept, of regeneration. And as you're aware, urban development is a holistic approach we give to a spatial development. That means a space. This is just the preamble, the introduction, the table of contents. We don't need to go too much into that. Let's go into the introduction generally. So what is urbanization and what is rapid urbanization? Currently, we have half of the world is being urban. And I'd like to break it down to you that what is urban? there are different categories at which the government classifies urban development. So sometimes it comes with laws. For example, in Nigeria, the military government, I think of Abacha or Babangida, pronounced every local government capital as an urban area. You see, that is politically motivated. And in Nigeria as well, when you have an agglomeration of over 5,000 people, it is termed to be urban. While I think in Ghana it's 20,000. So we're giving based on those parameters. But what are the things that make spaces, or maybe what makes them urban? The number one thing is, by the time our population grows up, like we know that we all come from a village or two. And at that time, they were just small hamlets. After hamlets, then they became maybe like a village. Then after the village, when people start multiplying, the natality rates go up. Then the population increases. At that time, we see that they become towns and cities as it were. We've had ancient cities like the Benin City, the Oyo Empire. So cities are not alien to Africa, or like what people make us believe that, oh no, cities are just an European thing. No. So this is an era of rapid urbanization. So what are we saying? The rate of urbanization is becoming faster. As of in the 80s, Nigeria was less than 100 million, but today we're over 200 million. Our urban centers have not only doubled or tripled, we've had 500% increase in urban centers. And as you're aware, when we have urban centers, what happens? We have environmental challenges. What are the environmental challenges? You have more cars on the road, you have fumes, you have overstretch of infrastructures. We are quite synonymous to not planning ahead, unfortunately, in developing countries. So like typical of African countries, which is not good, and I'll tell you later that how we want to change the narrative. We have overstretched infrastructure, like in Lagos. Lagos was planned in 1981 for maximum 6 to 7 million people. Today, you have about 22 million people, several suburbs. The metropolis is extending all on the way to the corridors of Moeba for the Badagry, the Songota. And these are rapid urbanizations without proper planning. And that's why we have those kind of environmental challenges. Then the concept of regenerative cities offers a transformative approach. How does it offer it? Because it's like you want to rebuild. When you have a dress and you're bigger, maybe you've gone fatter, you've gone slimmer. If you put on that dress, it doesn't fit. What do? You probably think of going back to the tailor to measure you again, to have a bespoke, to tailor fit it. So that's what regeneration cities offer. It offers a transformation that makes us align with human activities. What are our priorities? What is happening? What are the disasters we have? And this happens based on a symbiotic relationship. Most often than not, the quantity surveyor before me talked about the Brundtland reports, where this UN, we had the sustainable development goals, sustainable development, and we defined it as how to develop today so that we will not jeopardize the interests of our future generation. So most often than not, we just plan without looking at the long term. But regenerative approaches make us look at what is the relationship we have. What does man have with the environment? What does the environment also have with man? Of recent, we've seen a lot of people shift from inorganic food to organic food, because they've seen that there are, factors in those sausages that are carcinogenic, that cause different types of ailments. So the more we treat nature quite close and have, a relationship with nature, then it ensures a long-term viability and resilience. And I remember that the first speaker, Dr. Who mentioned resilient infrastructure. So you can see that the topics of the first, second, and third speaker are quite in sync. And that is the concept of the built environment. No professional should be ideally an island. So what does the regenerative cities, what do they offer? That's the question. What are they offering us? They're offering us a departure from the conventional urban planning, advocating for urban environments rather than regenerate ecosystems than we depleting them. So it's saying, like I said in my earlier, when talking about point 2, instead of you just waking up today and saying, you know what, I have this plot of land, level it, you're looking at what is the topography, What are we going to work towards? What are the water systems? And for the architectural students who are here, and even most built environment students, you can see that in as much as the Romans could actually just build, like a pipeline to Rome, they designed aqueducts. And this is the kind of engineering that we still look back and wonder why aqueducts. But if you look back, you see that if they had done the normal drainage channels or the normal water channels, maybe Rome would have been underwater in less than 50 years. Thank you. So, so after this introduction, can I have the next slide? I think you're used to that. Next slide, please. Yeah, so we're trying to fuse ecology and urbanism. The concept of urbanism is bringing those urban settings to life. And the concept of ecology is for us to come and look at the innovations, the eco-development. And when we bring sustainable urbanism at the top of it and breaking it down to sustainability that we explained as this planning for today without jeopardizing the interests of our future generations, then on the other hand, we have eco-innovation, meaning there is a way that we can actually innovate, like I said, in line or in sync to what nature has offered us. I remember I saw Dr. sharing a design of regeneration, where she was talking about a lot of people running away from complex engineering and regeneration and going for the simple ones. But sometimes people are looking towards ecosystems. I most often joke with my colleagues to say, you're looking at an ecosystem where we should go less on fossil fuel, you cycle, etc. And I said, come to Africa because Africa has all of this. We are less urbanized, we're less industrialized, so we have very low carbon footprint. And based on that, in as much as you take out our cities, in our villages, people, if not for the lack of healthcare, when it comes to livability, they eat better food, fresh fish, and all of that. So how do we innovate around the ecological system that we have? And when you now bring the innovation and the sustainability, you come to eco-development. What are the developments that we are having? Are we still having the former developments where we think everything Western are tick, 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 tick? Are we trying to conceptualize our solutions in such a way that we're now going to have what we call eco-urbanism? So like I talked before, if you look at the bottom of it, it's saying eco-planning and eco-design. So it starts with our design. Number one, in the housing sector, we're so heavy on concrete. Is it even readily available? That's number one. Number two, do they even fit in to our climate? If you stayed somewhere, maybe in a mud house before, and you stayed in a concrete house, you'll be able to judge which is better. But doesn't mean we're at the end of the road at Uhuru yet. But what is the amount of research that is going to the locally produced designs? Why are we, going so much? The architect mentioned using glasses for a well-lit room. Those are designs. Why do we want to copy people to use maybe wooden windows when that is not what is obtainable in our climate? Why are we going to use? So those are the kind of, and I was reading in newspapers that the Minister of Works and Housing is about to ban the use of asphalt because number one, I think they need to import most of it, and saying we have readily available materials. Why don't we look into that? So mainly when ecology and urbanism meet each other, we have what we call eco-urbanism. And the fulcrum of eco-urbanism is planning and design. So next slide, please. And in planning and design, the key element of it is the concept and the practice. How do you conceptualize it? How do you break it down? Do you think the same design you have in Lagos is applicable to Lokoja, is applicable to Zungeru? I don't think so, because that is why when you look at architecture, some of our buildings in up north are circular, while when you go to the traditional southeast Arochukwu, you have the courtyard system. And when you come to the southwest, you have another different type of system. And when you look at it as well, even the type of roof that is used. So these are things that we've dumped away at micro level, architectural level, and even at traditional level, because we had our traditional towns, like I said, Oyo Kingdom, Bini Kingdom, what were the kind of designs. I'm not saying we should copy them, but eco-urbanism teaches us to adapt. So regenerative cities have different strategy. And I know that the earlier speakers have touched on either one or two or three of even each of it. So we talk about the circular economy principles. Don't let anybody talk to you about cities or urban areas without economy. Where is the money going to come from? If you have a beautiful house, you make 10 million, you decide to use 9 million to build your house, and you've not saved money, or you are not incorporating how you intend to make money, in 2 years, I can tell you that that house is going to be run down, because by the time you have a tap issue, you can't replace it, then you use tape to wind it, then etc., etc. But when you have a system where you're like, okay, I have 10 million, for example, I intend to use 3-bedroom with my family and I. The other side of it, I'm going to have rent, maybe Airbnb or whatever. For the amount of money I get, I'm going to use it to, to maintain the whole compound. Those are like circular economy principles, and we should be able to apply it into our cities. And that's why they become regenerative. That's how you get income to make them livable, to regenerate them. But in the case where a lot of Nigerians, I'm sorry to say, we've had those issues where you have roads, we want to ply our roads for free, we don't toll them. Then how do you now regenerate that road when it starts having potholes? Those are questions that I think as students and professionals we should think about. Then we talked about green infrastructure and biodiversity. It all boils down around the eco-planning, eco-concept I talked about. How much are we infusing green infrastructure? How much are we protecting the biodiversity? Are we going to wetlands and destroying wetlands because we want to build, high-income buildings? Those are things that we should look at. How do you protect Mother Earth? And I saw in Architects' last slide to say, we really need help in protecting, Mother Earth. We look at renewable energy. What are the principles we are trying to put into that? So regenerative infrastructure, and I will not go over this because the architect, madam, I didn't get her name, the HOD at the university mentioned, the energy part of it. And she talked about, she mentioned the infrastructure. So, and I do not have any contrary opinion to what she said. For us to have regenerative infrastructure, how resilient are they? And resilience is a whole cycle which she talked about, the pillar 1, the pillar 2, and the pillar 3. How much are we infusing this into that? So we look at community engagement. Most of the time, we just go into communities. I've seen a lot of pictures of Makoko. As a young girl at about 22 years old, Makoko was my research topic. And people just go into Makoko, take pictures, take selfies. Oh, they are poor. And sometimes I ask them, have you even researched these people very well? Have they told you? So we don't engage communities. We just assume in our hires to say, you know what, they don't have water, they don't have schools, we need to give them clothes. But do we engage in focus group meetings with them? Do we even try to find out what do they want? Do we understand at what level they're in the society? And I'm happy we're talking about social equity, and when you talk about equity and equitability, they bring you abreast at saying, I have access to world-class healthcare. The person in Makoko also should have access to world-class healthcare. But how do I know how to contextualize that person's need? And most often than not, I see a lot of charity work, going into a lot of low-income areas. Unfortunately, also a lot of urban regeneration projects have failed, even at the World Bank level, because I tell colleagues, that we try to impose our Western ideologies that we've learned in planning, quantity surveying, architecture to say, oh no, why would you not have? Do we even think about them having basic infrastructure, basic housing, and the complexities of even WC? I've had meets sometimes in Makoko where people say, oh, I can never use a WC. And and you wonder, I said, no, there was a time that there was a snake jumped out. But with the necessary community engagement, you'll be able to inform them because it's a whole knowledge management. You advocate for the cause, then you convince them, then you also learn from them. So we talk about resilience to climate change. We talked about that. How do we design our cities? Then lastly, interdisciplinary collaboration. how do we collaborate as even, excuse me, how do we collaborate as even in the built environment? How do we work with people in the medical setting? How do we work with people in waste management? I'll give another example of Makoko when we're having issues of waste management in Lagos. The head of Loma at that time, he was very confused and he said, okay, I know what I'm going to do. You people say that there are no jobs. Oh, sorry, I didn't know I didn't start my video. So you people say that there are no jobs. The streets are narrow. So he said, okay, the big trucks cannot get there. After several stakeholder meetings, the cart pusher said, you know what you do? Get us small kekemaras, and kekemaras are those small tricycles, yeah. And before you knew it, the whole area was quite even neater. And because there was interdisciplinary collaboration, not only from waste management, but also the urban planners, also the engineers, where they had paved roads that made them able to enter the crook and crannies. Unfortunately, after gaining so much traction, the next governor came and had so many big ideas of turning Lagos to Dubai, and the waste management problem, as you might know, even cost him his governorship, his bid, because Lagos became dirty and the stakeholders started raising concern. So we need interdisciplinary collaboration to adopt it as one of our major 7 regenerative cities strategies. So please, next slide. So I'm going to go through these ones very quite quickly because I've gone into them in detail. The paradigm shift concerns us with integrating green infrastructure and diversity into urban planning. I talked about that to say, how do we put in biodiversity? Are we going to be breaking down our wetlands because we want to bring people in? And that's why we have a lot of maybe, what do we call it? A lot of slums coming up. We also have a lot of flooding. Do we even take into consideration how we're treating our wildlife, etc.? For a few people who are on my WhatsApp today, I was doing a video of the monkeys playing in my compound. And one of the things I know that in Kenya, for instance, they take very seriously, for those who have visited Kenya, is they integrate biodiversity into urban planning. So because there's a wetland not far from my house, less than 1 kilometer, sometimes when the monkeys are starving, they try to, jump the fences into people's houses, and you just have this sense of nature. But I don't know how many communities, except maybe village communities, have this. So in turning our urban areas and planning for them, we shouldn't take away our diversity and also integrate the urban infrastructure. So we talked about weaving green spaces, urban forests into biodiversity corridors. They are not only aesthetically pleasing, but they also contribute to the air quality. We understand, for those of us who did a bit of science and biology, and I think almost everybody on this call, if you're the built environment, should have done one science subject or the other. You have the carbon cycle where you breathe out carbon dioxide and the trees also emit oxygen. And that way we have cleaner air. So when you integrate, the flora and the fauna into your system, then you see that, everybody's talking about climate change. You are less, not that you're not going to be affected because it's a global issue, but we are less affected. Then we now preserve our native and our natural flora and fauna. Next slide, please. And the next slide is talking about strategies for efficiency. I talked about the circular economy, focusing on the environment, how important to growth sectors. We talked about, I was telling you that if you have a house and you're not thinking of how to repair it, you see consumption. We start from the design. What is the design? Are you designing a 1-bedroom or a big house with all your 10 million, or you're designing something that is going to produce? And when you produce, and when you look at the image on the right, you see the model that is anchored on circular economy, the consumption, the recycling, the raw materials. So it sees the whole thing as a process that each system doesn't go to waste. So while we are consuming, are we adopting the 3 R's? The 3 R's of reuse, of repair, and repurpose. and in some cases recycle. Unfortunately, Africa, we're trying to recycle a bit of our use and waste, but in a lot of developed countries, you see that even your plastic waste is not waste because it's now recycled to maybe blocks or to also, and for those of us who's had the opportunity, or those of you, there are sometimes you buy some paper and you see that this paper is made from recycled water. For those who also schooled in maybe University of Ibadan, I don't know if it's true, but we used to hear stories that University of Ibadan had a wastewater system that nothing actually went to waste, that whatever water you flush will be treated. And so you have a circular economy where even from the design, what are you thinking about? Are you designing a city where people will just come and it will die? Unfortunately, fortunately and unfortunately, we are regenerating cities like Ado-Ekiti at the moment and Aba. And one of the key things we saw is that these cities developed organically without even thinking of how it was going to be bothered around a circular economy. Where were the land use? How were they distributed? The consumption, the waste, the raw materials. Was there a rail line? The last rail line was in 1926, and if you're familiar with the Aba Women's Riot, you can imagine that settlement has been very productive over the last 100 years. But you can imagine that Aba is facing extinction because it's not built around a circular economy. So what is the paradigm shift? Is to make dispose model, which fosters sustainable consumption and production patterns. I really hammer on production patterns because if you do not have a city or an urban center that is productive, is going to, we have a lot of cities, for instance, in Seattle, you see that it's the manufacturing hub of Boeing. You realize that a lot of things are happening around the aircraft industry. If you look at Silicon Valley, startup, look at New York, you look at Wall Street. So cities typically have functions and production patterns. And once we can't establish that, and that's why we have so much bodied Lagos, which has 70%, which brings out 70% of Nigeria's economy. And that is to still continue to have the cost pool. People will continue to go to Lagos because it's attractive. And to a large extent, is built on circular economy because unfortunately it's not enough because like I said, the planning. So to the number 3 strategy, please. Next slide.
Hi, Uzo, are you there?
Well, the next
Okay,
slide
so
already.
we're talking about infrastructure. So infrastructure forms the backbone of cities, not even regenerative cities. When I was a lecturer, I used to tell my students that infrastructure is the nervous system of any human settlement. If you do not have roads, how do you move from point A to point B? If you do not have water, how do you maintain cleanliness? Or else you're going to have a health outbreak. God forbid you have a health outbreak. If you don't have social infrastructure like dispensaries, etc., you're going to have a pandemic in your hands. People might die, Lassa fever, etc. So the infrastructure is the backbone, but it's not only, it's the nervous system. Once the infrastructure breaks down, every other thing breaks down because the city doesn't become functional anymore. So we see regenerative infrastructure as the pillar. Whatever you want to do, if you don't look at infrastructure, then how do we design this infrastructure? Number one, we've seen that energy, people are fighting wars for energy. A young man once cracked a joke that wherever you see America fighting, then there must be energy there. And now we're talking of lithium, not even only oil and gas anymore, talking of lithium, titanium, etc. So those are forms of energy that developed nations will even kill to have. So how do you now maintain that if you don't want to have a lot of reliance on that? They have to be energy efficient. Africa, Nigeria, we have a lot of energy, but how are we even adopting them? How are we adopting them? The doctor mentioned that only 40% of Nigerians have access to electricity. So if we make it more efficient, maybe when I was young, we used to use 100-watt bulbs. I don't know if you remember. But these days I go to stores and I see 6-watt bulbs and I'm impressed. And these 6-watt bulbs give the same output as 100-watt bulbs. So you can imagine having 10 100-watt bulbs in the house. That is 1,000 watts, which is about 1,000 kilowatts already. So and how many watts can even a better pass my neighbor power? So by the time we look at energy efficient system, they make us more productive. And the next one is talking about water sensitive solutions. Yes, a lot of times, I don't know what we're going to be doing now. Everybody in Nigeria has boreholes, but we don't know that this is going to even affect our water tables. So regenerative cities have to look at systems whereby you are not looking at just one-off solution to say, oh, everybody can have a borehole so far you have water. No. In another 20 to 30 years, we're going to be having problems because our water tables are going to be low. Everybody's pumping water. We are not recycling water. The water is not even going back. Our water systems are drying up. We can see that people are talking about recharging Lake Chad because it's drying up, climate change. So what are those things that we're going to put in place? So renewable energy, we talked about that. We have to prioritize it. How do we prioritize? How do we prioritize renewable energy? How do we adopt our greenhouse gases? Are we still emitting? Like in Europe, for instance, they are phasing out a bit of diesel cars and high energy emitting cars. There was a news going around, I think last week, that for you to have a car in Singapore now, you have to pay almost about 130,000 USD or something. So those are ways to use laws to combat. I don't know if that story is true because I didn't read the detail, but I know that, for instance, in England, if you want to go through central London, you have to pay congestion charges. And this is just to discourage you from driving your car through, the mainland. And so there are different types of penalties. If you drive an electric car, the last time I was in England, I hired an electric car. And because of that, we're not charged congestion charges. So how do you adapt laws? How are you creating a more resilient? But the most important thing is we need to look at renewable energy as one of the key 7 components of regenerative city strategies. Slide number 5, please. So community engagement, I've talked about it. The first one says decision-making is equitable. Then we have access to resource, empower local communities, fostering a sense of ownership and unity. I couldn't talk more about this when I was introducing. And I gave the example of Makoko. How much do you integrate the local community? Most of us have our parents, or maybe have gone to school at some point. We have Parent Teachers Association. Sometimes that they want to do things, they write to the Parent Teachers Association. We want to introduce ABCD model. It's not that your school cannot do it, but they need to take your parents along and as stakeholders. In some schools, they even tell students to vote. So how much are we bringing this local community? Most often than not, we just go to them and say, you know what, you people are living in a very dirty environment. We need to evacuate you. We are moving you. And like I said, in the case of Makoko, they tell you every time, we are riverine people. How are you going to disassociate ourselves from our livelihood? We sell fish, we are used to it. You want to take us to Ikoyi, we don't, But again, it is us meeting at the middle. We want cleaner environment. We want to also listen to the people. We foster a sense of ownership and unity, and that way we can have sustainable regenerative cities. Then we talk about involving local residents. I talked about that. Businesses and organizations in decision-making process for a sense of ownership. If you come to my house today and say you want to paint it pink, and anything happens, I tell you, you didn't consult me, And so those are the kind of, you can go to some places. I'll give an example. When they were having the Kanji Dam, and the former President Shagari was going to launch the Kanji Dam, I always give this example. And 2 days before, they had gone to the Kanji people, they had built them very beautiful houses, air conditions, and etc. And the president asked, is everything fine? He said, yes. By the time the president got there on the day that they were going to inaugurate the dam, the indigenes of Kanji had removed the windows. Number one, the designer did not consult with them. The people of Kanji built their huts in rectangular shape, and they have very small windows because it's very cold at night, and they use wooden windows. So when they close the windows, there is no space for air to come in. Unfortunately, the designer had built rectangular huts and installed even ACs for them. How do you install ACs in an environment that is even cold already? So there was no sense of ownership. And it took almost a decade before they could bring them to terms with that. And after learning that, they adopted something better with Shiroro. So this collaborative engagement enriches urban planning, promotes the social cohesion vital for sustainable development. Can I have the next slide, please? So climate resilience. Today, if you're designing even your house and you're not taking into consideration climate resilience, I think probably you're joking, because there are some houses that even if you go, I use Lagos and Abuja as examples because those are cities I'm familiar with. But if you go to some places in Lekki, which were built like 10 years ago, they have to demolish because some of them are even underwater, like almost a whole story building is going underwater because they did not look at the type of soil type, and they're not designing climate resilience models. Instead of them piling, maybe they use raft. And because raft at that soil level, the water level, and etc. that we've been explaining would not fit. So they'll probably have to even spend more. And this comes to our cities as well. So if you plan a city that is probably underwater or that has the same sea level, and you're now giving approval for 5-story building, 10-story building, without going typically into what kind of model are you having to have a climate resilient city, then you're just joking. So how do we now go about that? We need to adapt these strategies into urban planning. Cities can withstand impact, so our cities can withstand the impact of climate change. I don't know if you've seen videos or pictures of New York like 2 or 3 days ago, where even the subways were flooded. And, those are litmus tests for climate change. Things that have not happened before are beginning to happen. The tycoons in South Korea, etc. So these days, it's really important to understand what are the implications of climate change in that particular urban area and how are you going to attempt to it. You see, the last one, even without looking at, is talking about rising sea levels, extreme weather events, changing temperature patterns, ensuring long-term viability of cities are already shown in the ability to lead the change against climate change. While some cities are leading, some cities are way behind. And unfortunately, as usual, I don't know why, developing countries, which most of them are in Africa, are really behind in adapting climate change strategies, especially to our cities. And that's why we still have this continuous flooding in Kogi, flooding in Lagos. We're always afraid for Cameroon to say they want to open the dam and all of that. But we need to go past these 1970 strategies, 1966 strategies, and develop new engineering strategies that are climate adaptive. Next slide, please. So I talked about interdisciplinary collaboration, and I said the built environment should not say, because we're in the built environment, it's not my business, I'm the surveyor, let me just, plot my this and that. Then the quantity surveyor is also saying, my business is just to tell you how many. No, it is the business of everybody in all various disciplines, including urban planning, architecture, engineering, environmental sciences, so even medical sciences. You'll be sure to wonder that the doctor will tell you ABC, the botanist will tell you. So there is a whole need for us to develop it. And if you look at the second point and the infographics, you see that we're putting people's hands together. We're showing you that the city at the middle, which looks like a person with webs, because the people are the center of the city. Who are the clients of the city? The people. So by fostering interdisciplinary partnership, cities can leverage on diverse expertise to develop innovative solutions and implement regenerative strategies effectively. Next slide, please. So based on that, I've talked about the whole 7. And with this 7, when you come up, you see that we're going to have sustainable, not only sustainable development, but sustainable urban regeneration, where we have regenerative cities, where the cities you are designing. So like we said, it's a blueprint for sustainable urban development, but however, it's not as if it's been holistically tested. But when you've taken all the 7, there is no how that you're going to miss a point, because most of these pillars come from it. And once you have that, then you don't have the pepper seller complaining that you're kicking out of street trading, because at that point you'd have factored her in and you'd have given her a space. And I've seen that most of our urban centers in Africa and in Nigeria, just put your T-square and everything. Then you have this beautiful layout. You have your school, you have your institutions, but you've forgotten that we're very accessible people. We do not want to walk more than 1 kilometer to go to a market. And so therefore we have markets 5 kilometers away, you have to drive. Then somebody who earns 10,000 naira and she's a housewife sits in front of her house and starts to sell oranges. The cost of the informal sector is cheaper. She's not paying rent and etc. Then our cities now start having, then we now say our cities are squalor. But however, if we had done our stakeholder management and we realize that there are different cadres in the society, maybe every corner plot or every other corner plot or every 5 corner plots, depending on the strategies we adopt, will provide spaces for maybe small markets. And I'll give you an example. That's why almost every military barracks or police barracks here has a Mami market, because this evolved from the wives of soldiers after that in the 70s or 60s, after their husbands have gone, on duty and all of that. They're just left by themselves waiting for money and all of that. So they tend to go to other markets and they realize they bring themselves together, then they have a Mami market. So those are the kind of, you can imagine if you had to leave Obalende all the way to maybe Lekki or maybe to Oyingbo. So those are, I'm just giving examples broadly when it comes to the informal sector. Also, when you have like a city where you're not even talking about the waste management system. So we make waste, we push our trolleys outside, we don't train them, then you have to call Aboki to dispose your waste. Aboki is not sensitized, so he pushes the waste maybe 1 kilometer or 2, then dumps it in the river. Then when he dumps it in the river, we forget that it flows into our drainages, it gets blocked, then we complain that it's flooding. So it's a whole cyclic system that if we adopt the 7 pillars, that we're going to achieve sustainable urban development. So I'll conclude by saying, I miss this dynamic landscape of urbanization and environmental challenges. Regenerative cities emerge as a beacon of hope. Like I said, that is not as if it's been certified, but it gives us the hope that we can even have better cities. We can have more functional cities. We will not bother about flooding. We will not bother about crime, because we'll have maybe solar paneled light everywhere. We'll have open spaces where our children can play. All those things. So we'll care less about juvenile delinquencies and our kids get. So you see, the city is a whole ecosystem. So the insights showcased in this particular paper, which is going to share with you, we wrote a paper. I wrote a paper, and it was from the paper I extracted this. It underscores the transformative power of regenerative urban planning. Like I said, it offers a blueprint, but not what do I call it? It offers a blueprint like a framework, not a theory. So these are parts and pieces of what has worked. Some things have been tested, and we're now saying, if we bring all of this together for an open space and harmonize it with nature, embrace the circular economy, prioritize inclusivity, like we talked about, engagement, advocacy, and fortify against all these climate change uncertainties. And also by adopting this strategy, cities can evolve from being only consumers of resources, which I explained to you that we are right now, to champions of sustainability and resilience. In my own words, I say to champions of sustainable development and urban resilience. So, and on that note, I really want to thank you for listening. I think I've been on for about 20 minutes. And if you have any questions, and like I always say, together we can do this. Even citizens of the country and of the urban setting, or the urban setting. So it's not only the authorities. So together we can achieve regenerative cities, and we can also achieve sustainable urban development in Nigeria and in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Odumbaku. Thanks for that. I mean, it shows how interesting it was that you didn't even, most of us wouldn't know you were on for 40 minutes instead of 30 minutes. It was highly insightful. It was good to hear you sharing all of those. And I mean, as you rightly said, people must be at the center of building the city. I mean, we can't overemphasize that. And thank you so much for taking us through all the 7 regenerative strategies about renewable energy and the green infrastructure, issues around interdisciplinary collaboration, also the issue of social change and community engagement. I mean, those are key issues. If we really want to chart the way forward for sustainable development, those are issues we must continue to look at. And then I also found it interesting when you spoke about the eco-innovation, which means that we have to ensure that innovation is in sync with what nature has offered us. And for us to continue to move and gear towards preserving Mother Earth, because I mean, we don't have any other place to go to. We're here, and then we have to make sure it is sustainable for the next generation. I'm sure everyone agrees with me that you, just like other speakers, did justice to your topic, and it's such a privilege to also learn from your wealth of knowledge. Thank you so much. And I mean, the students on the call too must have learned so much. It could even be them getting research topics through what you have said. Thank you so much. On behalf of the NIQS Foundation, I'm saying thank you to you for your time. Thanks for staying on the call, even though you have family engagement, but you have shown how devoted you are to the cause, and we do not take it for granted. And to other speakers as well, thank you also very much for doing justice to your topics. I've learned a lot. I'm sure all the participants have learned a lot. I'm sure this will open doors for us to collaborate and also chart the way forward for these issues of common interest. So thank you so very much, the 3 speakers who did fantastically well for their topics. Thank you. On behalf of NIQS Foundation, I say a big thank you to all of you. We have come to the session for comments and questions. And because Dr. Odumbako would have to run now, please, I would like to crave your indulgence and for us to take the questions and comments and observations to her first, before we then take the other speakers. So please, you might want to, if you want to speak, you can indicate for the tech team to see that you want to speak, so you can unmute yourself. But if you want to post the comments in the chat box or the observations, please just do that, or your questions as well. You can ask in the chat box if you do not want to speak. So we've come to that time where we all can rub minds and share and communicate on this highly insightful and very, very timely topics that have been put together by the NIQS Foundation. I see something from Love More Size, QS Love More, I think. She said, okay, I think this question should be for Dr. Akile. Someone has a question. Dr. Femi Balogun, please, you can have the floor, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Fesai. Very nice presentation. First and foremost, I want to commend the presenters. It's been very qualitative, very impressive and insightful. I'm really happy to listen to them. I could see the energy, the fire, particularly in the last presenter. You know, she was so passionate about the presentation. Thank you so very much, Dr. Omar. I don't know whether I should just make my comments on the 3 together so that I don't keep on coming up once again. The first one is, Dr. Omar talked about the kind of looking at the transportation system. You said that thing should be a holistic issue. Shouldn't look only at the building, but the transportation system. I know Lagos State, where you are, they are involved in trying to do what we call the integrated transport system, whereby you look at the road networks, you look at the rail network, and you look at the waterways and harmonize those 3 together in a way that they can be able to present a kind of a homogeneous composite transportation system for the populace. You can come from the waterways and jump into a train, and from there you take a BRT to wherever you are going without bringing your cars and whatever. I don't know if you are aware of this in Lagos. If you are, I'd just like to just share your experience about how far this has gone. That is for Dr. Moore. If I can just make the other two comments. MC, can I make the other two comments or I stop?
You can just quickly run through them. Dr. Omo will take care. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. The other one is from my colleague, Kiros Onyelaye. Very wonderful presentation. I'm always very excited when he is making presentation. I want to appreciate and thank him for that. But he talked about the life cycle costing, and which he said could also be whole life cycle costing, whereby you establish the cost, the overall cost, having considered the asset from the beginning to the end, even up to demolition and whatever. That is fantastic. He also talked about life cycle analysis, whereby you begin to look at the carbon footprint on this particular property, and you now arrive at kind of a figure. The question I want to ask him is, yes, you have life cycle costing, you have life cycle analysis. How do you now reconcile the two different products? You know, you have gotten one here about cost, you have gotten one analysis. Does he have any kind of an experience on how he, you know, come to a kind of a compromise between these two databases that he has produced? And I want him to, if he may, link it with the International Cost Management System. How relevant is that within the context of International Cost Management System, which provide a structured approach to harmonizing these two databases? Thank you. Dr. Amina, fantastic presentation, wonderful presentation. I noticed particularly your energy triangle, pyramid, if I may, energy pyramid. You dealt so well with it in your presentation. But my view is that it was putting only the attention on the on one side of carbon footprint. That the other one, which is the embodied energy, you know, is not really dealt with. I'm not an architect. I know the time is short, actually, but I just want to know if in architecture, you also have to consider the embodied energy before the selection of any particular material for construction, because a lot of progress has been made on operational carbon, how you select materials and methods to be able to conserve energy, to be efficient in the buildings, so that, like all the examples you gave, using LED instead of the other lighting system that would consume a lot of energy, using, you know, even orienting the building in a way that you may not even need air conditioning, you know, depending on how you are able to do that. Yes, I agree. But the material that is actually coming, for instance, steel and concrete, they are very high when you look at the carbon footprint from the extraction of that material up to the use of that material in the building. How do you reconcile? Do you normally have kind of energy rating for some of those materials so that you can guide the designs that you are going to produce? Thank you so very much. That's my comment. Wonderful session. I am really, really happy, and I thank God I'm here today. And thank you for the organizers. My DG, thank you so very much for your wonderful work and your team. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much, Dr. Balogun, for those questions. Dr. Omo, would you want to run through all the questions that you want to take?
Okay, yes, thank you, Dr. Balogun, for the comments and especially the one with the passion. Yes, I'm aware that there is an integrated master plan for Lagos. It's called the LUTP, the Lagos Urban Transport Plan. And before then, it was in 1981. Then in 1999, luckily, or how would I put it, 99, the World Bank was also approached, and the World Bank mentioned that one of the conditions that they will give the Lagos state government the funding, which you see that the BRT and the two red lines, actually, I think they're going to 5, as of the last time I checked the document, is if they have an authority, and that's when they initiated LAMATA, which is Lagos State Metropolitan Transport Authority or something like that. And it was headed by, I think, Engineer Muberiola, who was headhunted also by the World Bank. And I think to a very large extent, I'm proud of the work that they put in. Of course, exchange rates, inconsistency in government, etc., has quite affected the implementation. They were to implement it in phases. And for you, those of you familiar with Lagos, you see that Lagos has a sprinkle of jetties. You have jetty in Ikorodu that can take you all the way straight down to Oriental. You have jetties in Ijora and Co. Then now you have the rail line. Then you have the roads. Some of them were widened, some were reduced. Like the Ikorodu road was reduced from the main lane from 3 to 2 to accommodate the BRT. So this is all an offshoot of the integrated master transportation plan, where the principle was to involve integrated planning. In fact, another offshoot of it is walking. There were designs of straight crow distances using canals. I don't think they've even touched that at all, but I'm aware of it, sir. And to the best of my ability, I think that particular plan is almost 40% up to date. They have 3 more plans. I think the green, the yellow, I can't remember. But Lagos is supposed to have 5 metro plans or rail plans, as you call them. Newer roads, the Fort Milan Bridge, which the last time I heard is they're bidding for it. So yes, Lagos has looked into it even, I think, earlier than maybe when we were younger. And we met them at it, and I was privileged to be one of the very few professionals at the early stage of my career. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
For the question, yes, please.
Yeah, thanks for answering that, Dr. Omo. Is there any other person among the participants who has a question for Dr. Omo, because she has to drop off the meeting now. So if you have any questions, please indicate by raising your hands or drop it in the chat section below. A question or a comment for Dr. Dumbaku, please signify. Okay, I don't think I can see any hands up and no other questions or comments in the chat box. Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Dumbaku. I mean, you did fantastic to your presentation. Everyone is well fed. We all listened and we gained so many things. We really thank you so much for being on the call today, for staying till the end, till this point rather, and for sharing your wealth of knowledge. I hope that this would also be an opening for collaborations with other participants on the call. Thank you so much. And yeah, we can then allow you to have some family time. Thank you for your time. We're grateful.
Thank you very much. And thank you especially to the visionary leadership of Madam Tinaike. I mean, this is, like Doctor said, I think these are the kind of engagements we need to keep having, you know, and even after we have them, we shouldn't lose steam or lose touch of this kind of network, as we know the beginning, we do not know, you know, the very positive outputs it can actually take us to, especially as building better societies for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Odumbako. Thanks, and have a wonderful afternoon. So if you have further questions for all the speakers, please signify by raising your hand, question or comments. And if you don't want to speak on the call, you can then drop them in the chat box, please. Questions to other presenters, if you have it, please let us know. There's a question here to Dr. QS. I would assume that was to Dr. Winile, hopefully. It's from Love More Size. She'd made a comment about Southern Africa. Depends mostly on South Africa to import construction materials, and that's resulting in high costs of construction. That comment is from Love More Size. Please, if you have further questions or comments, please signify by a raise of hands. I'll give about a minute to check if there's any other person. If not, then would call on us to bring the session to a close. Since they all did fantastic well for their presentations and everyone got things, thank you so much for being on the call. Thanks for being here till the end of the meeting and the webinar. Thank you so much. And before we give the closing remark, I would like to also thank you to thank the presenters, QS Adebowale Oyinleye and Dr. Amina for the highly insightful. Oh, Dr. QS Oyinleye has something to say. I see your hand up. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yes, please proceed. Over.
All right, thank you. Because the last question you asked that was raised by someone, so I thought maybe there was going to be a follow-up question. That's why I hesitated. So there are two questions really. The one that was asked by Dr. Femi Balogun about life cycle costs and then life cycle assessment. Life cycle cost just gives us the cost of the product or the building over its lifespan. And then the life cycle assessment is actually the impact on the environment. And when we're talking about the impact on the environment, it's usually measured using the carbon equivalent, which is the a ratio that is used to measure the quantity of greenhouse gas that is emitted in order to have that product or material for you to use. So one is in, so to speak, is in monetary terms. The other is in more like impact terms. So the two of them go together for you to actually be able to do a really a good quantification of the impact of a built environment. So it's not just cost alone, but the impact that is doing. I had a client recently that said he wanted so much light in his house, and actually we are using LEDs. So he said, no, I want 30-watt LEDs in the living room and all that. He said, why? You don't need this much. And then he wanted many of them because he's the client. So at the end of the day, we gave him that. Then by the time we started doing our load factoring for the inverter and all that, and I discovered that he needed a bigger inverter system to carry all that. So those are the things that we need to be able to understand, that if you don't do it properly, the impact is going to show up somewhere. And then in that particular project, we had to take some things off the inverter system because of those decisions that he made. Quite all right, it's an LED that is using, but because it demanded for something that is much powerful, it has its own impact at the end of the day on the renewable energy that he wanted to use in the house. And going secondly to, okay, the ICMS. Yes, the ICMS already established a standard form of reporting on these things. That's the LCC and the LCA. So there is a standard form of reporting. They have provision for you to report on carbon, and then also provision for you to report on costs. So ICM is like, that's International Cost Management Standard. So they have a provision for you to do that. And then talking about the question from Lovemore, I didn't quite understand the question because they are based in South Africa and then we import most things from the south also of Africa. So I didn't quite get, but I think the gist is that you import most of the material that you use in a place. Good. Now, the question is this: are there alternatives where you are? If the alternatives, can we analyze those alternatives and see whether they're actually giving value? So if they do give value, then it is good for you to see how you can make use of it. I was on a project that there was a local quarry that was mining granite. So we wanted to import granite, but because there's a local quarry, the client said, okay, we must patronize our local quarry because the government actually. But unfortunately, the quarry had not developed in such a way that their product was up to a certain standard. So when we began to make use of it, we discovered that we have more wastage, which now means we're actually spending more to be able to use that local alternative, so to speak. So you need to actually carry out an assessment to see whether it's actually cheaper to use that thing that is local than importing another material. So having said that, I believe that generally speaking, though, materials that are closer to home should give you a cheaper building, probably in the short run, but you need to do a long life cycle assessment to really know whether you are having that value over the lifespan of that building. That particular building I'm talking about now, after some years, those granites had to be removed and replaced. So you see, at the end of the day, you didn't actually get anything. It was even more like a wastage. So those are things that need to be considered. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Akinleye. There was another question to Dr. Amina from Dr. Balogun. And there is another question. So I'll just run through the second question so you can take both, please. There is one from Sarah Benjamin. She was asking that considering the North, Sokoto, for instance, where there is no natural inhabitants, how do we approach this kind of places? That's from Sarah from Akure. Over to you, Dr. Amina.
That's a very strange question. No natural inhabitants in Sokoto? What does that mean? Maybe you can elaborate, but let me take the first question and I'll ride on the last response. So talking about embodied energy, what we find in school is that there's a big disconnect between what we teach and what happens in the industry. Somehow, and well, it is understandable, some materials are risky. Doing things that are unconventional is risky. And that's why we deal a lot with case studies, and we're so happy when people actually do kind of experimental things and it works, so that people understand that it can actually work. So vernacular ways of doing things using natural materials, people are not used to it because somehow the market has standardized itself to just use the normal things. Those are in the market. Those are tried and tested. And even in school, when students use innovative or creative interventions, people in industry kick back against it. That being said, there's room for experimentation. There's room for people to be very creative in whatever they do. And looking at embodied energy is a science that we have to look into. I think there's a lot of potential to do it in schools. We have to do it more. There are courses called building material science, where what you do is you look at the, in theory, what the material is. But I think there's a scope to look more into the embodied energy, to be honest. So yes, that's a very fair point, and there's a lot of work to be done in this aspect. I'm still not sure what the second question is.
Sorry, I'm not sure. Thanks very much, Dr. Amina, for that. She had written something about trees and heat. I'd asked her to rephrase the question, but I can't seem to see that. So I don't know if she's talking about, she wrote trees, she means trees and heat. I don't know.
I think maybe she means it's sparsely vegetated, maybe.
Probably,
so,
yeah.
So it's the desert, it's in the Sahara region. So can you repeat the first question? Let me see if I can make sense of it now. Are you muted?
It's saying, for instance, okay, wait, let me see if I can do that again. So she's saying, okay, for what happens in the north, for instance, Sokoto, where she then say where there is no inhabitants, what do we do? So I think she means greens, maybe trees and all of those things. Like, how do they incorporate those issues in those areas? I'd asked her to rephrase, but I can't see anything from her, unfortunately. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah.
So, as somebody who's into renewable energy efficiency by climatic things, the biggest thing you can do is grow trees, I guess. We do that a lot. It's easy to do. And some trees grow faster. They're native trees, preferably, because it means that it needs less for them to thrive. So it gives shading, it gives medicinal qualities. So you can't go wrong in the first instance if you grow trees. So landscaping, very important. You have to know where to grow the trees, how to, and what trees to grow for it to give you different functionality. So for example, if you're going to put a tree for shading in the east and the west, because the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, what you need is one that will give you a horizontal cover like that, horizontal, so that, sorry, in the east and west is vertical, because that's where the sun rises and sets. But in the north and the south, you need a horizontal cover. I don't know if that makes sense to you. So the form of the tree matters, and the leaves, how big the leaves. So some trees are for rain cover. So it depends. I don't know within what context really she's asking the question, but I think the little that I've said helps.
Thank you very much, Dr. Amina. Thank you so much. I can't see any questions here again from anyone. Yeah, but to the presenters, thank you very much for doing justice to the topics. Thanks for waiting until the end. It's a weekend, but you stayed. So I'd like to pass on now to QS Dr. Celestina Nkechi, aka FNIQS MNI, who is the DG NIQS Foundation, for her closing remarks. Over to you, QS ma'am.
Thank you, Fisayo. Thank you for always doing justice to the moderation. As everybody can see, this is an all moment for every one of us in the built environment. The speakers, we are just too awesome. I must thank Mr. President of NIQS for being on the call. I thank all the board members that keep supporting us and being on the call. Every one of you, I appreciate you. Thank you very much. Fisayo, I owe you so much for always answering our call. Thank you so very much. Dr. Amina, Dr. Moore, QS Adewale, thank you so very much for sharing your profound insight on the critical theme of building for the future, the vital role of the built environment in achieving sustainable development. Their presentation have been nothing short of enlightening, empowering, and truly inspiring. Dr. Amina exploration of regenerative construction technologies and resilient infrastructure for sustainable urbanization shed light on innovative approaches that hold the potential to reshape the way we construct and manage our urban spaces. Her commitment for fostering resilient and sustainable urban development is indeed commendable. QS Adebowale is one of us, a QS, a renowned quantity surveyor that we respect so much in our space. His presentation on quantifying the future of the built environment for sustainable development provided us with a quantifiable perspective on the future we are collectively striving to build. His dedication to advancing the field of quantity surveying for cause of sustainability exemplifies the commitment of professionals in our industry. Dr. Moore, our favorite Dr. Moore, thank you so much. I was so worried that you get angry, but you stayed. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your understanding. Your discourse on designing regenerative cities A blueprint for sustainable urban development expanded our horizon by illustrating the power of visionary city planning. Your blueprint for regenerative cities serves as a guiding beacon for architects, urban planners, and policymakers alike as we navigate the path towards sustainable urbanization. I want to use this opportunity to thank everyone. As we reflect on the knowledge and insights shared today, let us remember that our actions today shape the world of tomorrow. Each of us play an integral role in crafting a sustainable future through the built environment. Let us draw inspiration from the expertise presented today and apply it in our respective domains. Before I close, I must thank the quantity surveyors from Botswana that joined us. I must thank all the students from Bayes University and every other person. I can see our time is going off. Thank you so very much. Thank you for coming on call. God bless you all, and bye.
Thank you very much. QS Dr. Nkechi Eke. Thanks for the warm closing remarks. And to everyone who has stayed on the call before I pass on to the NIQS Secretariat, I want to say thank you so much on behalf of the NIQS Foundation for availing us your time. I hope we do take this on to further chat the way forward, that it doesn't end in just this webinar, but that we all chat the way forward, we all put our commitment to action and to walk the talk to ensure that we have a sustainable built environment that is built on a people-centered and planet-responsive approach and not just profit. I remain Fisayo Arosela Fakayode. Thanks for listening to us all today. For the presenters, thank you so very much. It's been a lovely time for me, and I promise to walk the talk, and I do really hope that you all will as well. I hand over to the NIQS Secretariat. Over.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for participating. We appreciate you. Thank you so much. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.